there's different ways to approach this subject from a mystical standpoint or from a very practical standpoint. And I'm going to try to blend the two together. But just imagine if our people in our world could actually read our thoughts and read our minds, read our energy, so to speak, so that we walk into a room like this and people, they know something about us right away because they understand what is coming from our thought patterns and our body language and stuff like that. And to a certain degree, I mean, all of this is true, that we can read people's energy to a certain extent. Maybe some people more than others. And I actually believe that women are more sensitive to reading energies of other people than guys are. But anybody can kind of develop that art or that sensitivity, by just kind of tuning into people. We've probably all heard of people reading auras, like people reading other people's auras, the colors that are around their body and all these things. But, if we have a partner or somebody that we live with in our homes, and, you could kind of tell when they're in a bad mood, and we might ask them, "What's wrong with you?" And they go, "Oh, nothing." And we know there's something there, even if they say, "Oh, nothing," we know that there's something going on. And usually that's a person's first remark. There's something really bothering them, and they sit down at the table for dinner or whatever it is, and "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing." "Yeah, right," But it's just a way of being, and we can kind of pick up on that energy from other people. Animals can pick it up pretty easily. Like dogs know when somebody's, when an angry person comes near a dog and the dog doesn't even know them, they can tell. If it's a lovable person, somebody that is very kind and gentle, dogs seem to know. Cats too, to a certain extent, but cats are kind of like, they'll just kind of watch everybody from a distance for a while, until they figure them out, it seems. Not all cats, but a lot of cats. Her cats are like that. They just kind of check you out, and then they'll go in from there.
They sense your energy, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna make sure this is on. So if we can, we can probably read other people's energy. Like right now, I could try, if I made an effort, I could try to read people's energy in this room, and I can tell that everybody's very nice and very compassionate and very kind, there's as far as the energy goes, maybe some people have some questions, and and we'll save that for later on, inquisitive, that kind of thing. But if we assume that maybe on a higher level that people can actually really read our thoughts and read what is going on in our minds and read what we're anticipating and all of this, wouldn't that change things a lot? It would change things a lot for ourselves if we walked into a room and people knew what we were thinking and actually make us a little bit paranoid about the situation. It'd be kind of interesting. And again, to a certain extent, people can tune in on what we are, what we're up against. Not necessarily what we're thinking word for word, but if there's something bothering us, or if we, if we converse with another person and we don't like that person, that energy shows. If we really like somebody, and we don't like them for just a simple attachment reasons, that we really care for them, that energy will show. People pick up on that, and they appreciate it. If we really have compassion for another person, it shows, and people appreciate that. And it's as if, if we can go through life and keep that in mind, it would change things a great deal for us. We would treat people differently, and in turn they would treat us differently too. And there's other levels of being very, very much intuitive. The one example that I ran into, I used to go to Thailand a lot, and there was I'd go there to study and to train. I had a teacher there, and we used to run these retreats, and I would go there a couple of times a year for a couple of months out of each year. And there was a woman teacher. She kind of ran the operation. She didn't speak a lot of English, but like after knowing her for about a year, I realized that she spoke more English than I thought she did, and she understood the language, but I didn't really get a chance to actually sit and converse with her. But she was you could tell she was a very powerful person, very powerful human, and they were in the northern part of Thailand, if you're familiar with Thailand at all. And they were asked to come to the southern part, a place called Surat Thani, and really in the southern part of Thailand compared to Chiang Mai, is where they're basically located out of. And it was many, many miles, and they wanted our group to do a retreat. And these retreats were huge, like 100 people. And so they were checking into a retreat center. And some of these centers that they used were Buddhist temples, and some of them were just like community centers, and all different variety. And so she went down there, and she took some of the people that were a part of the retreats. And I was in Thailand, but I wasn't able to go with her. So there was maybe a half a dozen people that went with her and took this journey. I think they flew down, and they're to meet with this woman that was running this retreat center. It's supposed to be a highly realized person or something. And she got there, and like I said, I wasn't there. This is what I heard, but they got there, and she sat down. They were in a room, not about half the size of this room, and they all sat around, and they were expecting, the people that were there expecting to hear some conversation, that they're going to talk back and forth and say things like, nice to meet you, and I love your retreat center, and I hope we can be friends, and all this type of thing. But this woman and this other woman, they sat down facing each other in chairs, and at first there were no words spoken at all. And they were just, gazing at each other. And it became a little bit uncomfortable for these other people that were there, because they, kind of felt uneasy, that was there some conflict or something, what was going on. And this went on for, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. After a while, the two women, they closed their eyes, and they were just sitting there in meditation. And so everybody else started meditating, for 10 or 15 minutes, and then they came out of this meditation, and in total they were there for about a half hour. In Thailand they call it a way, where they just pay respects, they bow to each other. And then they got up and they split their separate ways, and the other people, they're like lay people. Lay people means that they're not ordained or anything like that. They're just, like us. And they got up and kind of like shrugged their shoulders, I don't know, and then they followed her out. And so they struck up a deal, and they did all their communication without any words at all. And pretty phenomenal, pretty phenomenal thing. And no words exchanged. They just use their telepathy, like a mental telepathy. I wish I was there. I wish I would have loved to have seen it, although there would have been nothing to see really. But the reason I say that is because there's different levels of how we can read, and different levels of energy that some people can tune into. And if we can assume again, that people are understanding our intentions and our energy and what we're thinking and why we are who we are and what we're doing, and keep that in mind, it could really, really change things for us. I think we'd be more approachable. We'd certainly be more loving and more compassionate, and it would show in our lives. It's very much like if we live a rich life inwardly, we can live a rich life outwardly. And if we are poor on the inside, we're actually poor on the outside as well. And it's from the thoughts, the memories, the overall energy that we produce. And how does that relate to meditation? How does that? It has everything to do with meditation as far as mindfulness goes, and as far as awareness. And the more that we are in tune to our own beingness, our own thoughts and things that we do in life, and how we interact with ourselves, how we interact with other people, it can change things drastically for us. And so, what would we change if people if we had just an inkling that somebody could actually read our mind? What would we do? What would we do differently? We try to maybe put more loving thoughts out there, and would we try to play games with them? I don't know. It's an interesting subject and an interesting idea. But the main thing is to realize that people can pick up on our energy. They can pick up on our intentions. Body language alone says a lot, to people. And so the invitation here is that we'll do a meditation based on kind of how we would approach others, how we would conduct ourselves and conduct our life, if by understanding that our energy can be transferred and read by other people and that type of thing. And then I will guide us through about the first 10 minutes of the practice. With the eyes closed, just notice how the body feels at this moment. So anytime that we find ourselves focusing on the body, we're being very present, which is exactly what we want to happen in meditation. But rather than just saying, well, I'm going to focus on the body or some aspect of the body, that the body is very, very vast and all these things related to the body. So we want to kind of narrow it down. And so I ask that we bring our attention to the breath. Now, everybody in this room might be using the breath in a different way. Might be noticing the coolness of the breath as it comes in, or maybe the warmth as it leaves. You might notice the breath, some area of the body, like the tip of the nose, around the nostrils. You might notice it within the sinuses. Sometimes we feel it in the windpipe or within the lungs themselves. And sometimes we can focus or kind of pick up on the movement of the body as we breathe. Very subtle movement. We might notice the beginning of the breath or the end of the breath. We might notice that we breathe in and then there's a pause and then we breathe out. This goes on again and again. And of course, we're very fortunate that the breathing goes on about on its own, whether we are trying to manipulate it or trying to change it or paying attention to it. So we don't have to be conscious of the breath for the body to do the breathing. It's just a function of the body. And that's one of the reasons that it makes such a good meditation object. Our attention can leave the breath and focus on something else, like a sound or something that we're going to be doing in the future or something that happened in the past. Kind of like a daydream. And the body's still breathing on its own. And then as a meditator, we notice that the mind has wandered off like this. And we go, oh, that's right, I'm meditating. So we bring our attention back to the breath. And then we feel like a meditator again. And this is very common, happens to everyone. It's just a part of the practice of meditation. There's a part of us that can focus on the breath, and when we're doing so, as I mentioned, we are very, very present. In other words, this presence, this present time awareness is our only real, true reality. It's the only thing that's happening now. And we're using the breath as a tool to make sure and to help remind us that this is what we're supposed to be doing as a meditator, to be coming into this presence. And resting in it. Another aspect of meditation is watching. And we can do this while we're focusing on the breath, but we can be watching what comes up in the mind. And it happens very naturally. If our thoughts are on something other than what we're supposed to be doing, our intention, which is meditating, then we can notice that. We could be sitting here meditating or looking like we're meditating and thinking about applying for that new job or any number of things that the mind can kind of get preoccupied with. They say we think 60 to 90 thoughts a day, and 95% of those are the same thoughts that we were thinking yesterday. And so it goes on again and again and again. And in meditation, we notice these things because we actually become more sensitive. We find ourselves in a quiet location. Our eyes are closed. Our intention is to remain very present, to let go of memories of the past and plans for the future. And so it's just natural for us to be very sensitive to what's going on in the mind and the feelings within the body and the sensations within the body, and also the feelings that we have mentally, moods and emotions, and the pleasantness and unpleasant things that we recognize within the mind. And so noticing what comes up in the mind and what is happening is a big part of kind of imagining that others can understand and read our energy. We can certainly do it ourselves, and that's what we do in meditation. That's the connection between meditation and there's clairvoyance, or having somebody, imagining somebody can read our thoughts. So in the same way that we can read our thoughts and notice our thoughts, if we stay with that, it's in almost exactly the same way that we can imagine other people reading our thoughts as well. And once we start paying attention to the thoughts and the things that go on in the mind, we all of a sudden realize that there's lots of times that we're not paying attention. The mind is just endlessly chattering and running off to wherever it wants to run off, and there's a part of us, the watcher of all of this, that can't even keep track of it after a while. That's a big part of mindfulness, is to be able to see all this, to stay with it in a very non-judgmental way. And so once we become a practiced meditator, somebody with a consistent practice, there's very rarely a time, if ever, when we become bored. Because just watching and noticing what goes on in the mind is something that can keep us busy for the rest of our lives if we choose it to do so. And so these two aspects of meditation, focusing on the breath, finding that spot in the body where we feel the breath the most, and trying to stay with that. It's not always easy, but it is the practice. And then while we're doing that, we want to watch and see what comes up within the mind. And these two activities will eventually seem like they're all completely connected, all the same. And they are part of the practice of meditation. If you'd like to, you can bring your palms together in front of you. This is a loving kindness practice that we use for the end of our meditation. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. May we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you. So I call it an invitation, and that's what I was talking about when we first sat down, as far as using meditation and looking at it like we are in company of somebody that can actually read our thoughts and read our mind and read our energy and that kind of thing, and how we would behave, and would things be differently? Would we be different, or we would be do things differently? Try to change our thought patterns and everything. But it's the same way that we can do that to ourselves. We watch our own thoughts in meditation and outside of meditation. We watch our kind of like watching our P's and Q's, as people would say. But when we meditate, we become more moral, more ethical, without even trying, because we're watching and we're staying in tune to what is happening with our mind, with our thoughts, with our intentions, all of this. And again, I can't stress enough that we become sensitive to all these different things in our life. How we treat other people, how we treat ourselves. And, we probably know that being oversensitive is not necessarily healthy. And it can be darn right nerve-wracking, if we're overly sensitive to things. But being more sensitive to our everyday activities and our everyday life and what's going on in our mind is very, very healthy for us. And that is, a part of meditation. If we notice a little bit more from the time we wake up till the time we go to bed, it pays wonderful dividends. We become a different person, but it's very, very slow. When we start meditating, I feel like I'm trying to sell something. I'm not, but when we start meditating, usually it changes us. It's so subtle that we don't notice as soon as other people in our life notice, because we're with us all the time. We're here all the time, and we don't notice the change. But if we're with somebody every other week or even each week, they'll notice the change, and they'll usually say something to us about it, before we notice. They'll say, "Oh, you're different somehow. You act different. Your reactions are a little bit different." They might notice that if they would have to say something a little bit differently to us, otherwise we get upset, perhaps. And when we don't get upset, we don't get bothered by things the way we used to. It's kind of like, realizing that we don't have to extend that energy, that negativity anymore. And then eventually we notice, we notice the benefits, and then that's when it becomes a part of our life. So, any questions about the practice? Any questions about anything at this point?
What do you think is the best time during the day to practice this, like in the morning or like before you go to bed?
Yeah, but both of them. They say, from the Eastern traditions, they say again, when I was in Thailand, they used to tell me this all the time, but that the best time to meditate is when they would actually say, when the mosquitoes come out, that's the best time to meditate. What that means is mosquitoes are horrible flyers. They don't like to fly in the wind. I don't know if you knew that, but if it's a really windy evening or something like that, there's not very many mosquitoes, but when it's nice and calm out, there's mosquitoes, they come out. And when the sun is going down, is the atmosphere is the calmest, and when the sun is coming up, that's when the atmosphere is the calmest. You can notice that there's usually very, very calm. There's no wind, very little wind. And so that calmness in our environment is very, very important for us. Those are the easiest times for us to meditate. Because, when the environment is calm, we're calm too, and it's just easier that way. But it's not always practical for us to meditate when the sun is coming up or when the sun is going down. And it's really up to the individual. I prefer meditating in the morning. I'm a morning person. I just wake up and I have less inhibitions, and I feel like I can do more, and my mind is clear. Mornings work out really well for me. A lot of people they just get up and they got to get to work, and they don't have time to meditate. And then I would suggest that they meditate at night. If I meditate at night, I get sleepy. And being sleepy and meditation don't go hand in hand, because especially if we're not new to meditation, we're sitting there relaxed with our eyes closed, and our body is saying, okay, yeah, this is time to sleep, just automatically. But a lot of times that doesn't happen in the morning because we just got done getting our 7 or 8 hours of sleep, so it works out better. So, yeah, morning works out really well. I guess the second best choice would be at night. Try to keep that in mind. The meditation is both becoming present. We can use that by watching the breath, and also watching our thoughts, watching what's coming up. Not in such a way that we're going to jump on our thoughts and jump on that bandwagon and go for a ride with them. And I mean a ride like into the future or into the past, but just notice what comes up. And that is mindfulness. And mindfulness is just being aware of what's going on within. And meditation is the practice of going within. We're closing our eyes, and instead of all of our attention and our senses, our sights and smells and hearing, instead of being connected with the world out there, we're just stopping all that and then turning it around and bringing it in here, seeing how it works, what's going on with this. And this is the most important part. If we can get this figured out, we can easily figure that stuff out. So, okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Yeah.